December 24, 2008, Covina, California. 22 miles from downtown Los Angeles, nestled beneath the San Gabriel Mountains, the quiet suburban community prepared for Christmas Eve celebrations. For the Ortega family, this night would mark their final gathering. The house on East Knollcrest Drive glowed with festive lights. Inside, 3 generations of the Ortega family had assembled for their annual Christmas Eve party. Joseph Ortega, 79 years old, and his wife Alicia, 70, watched their children and grandchildren fill their home with laughter. Their sons James and Charles arrived with their wives. Daughters Leticia, Alicia, and Sylvia joined the celebration. Grandchildren ran through the rooms, their excited voices mixing with Christmas music. A poker game was underway in the living room. The Christmas tree sparkled in the corner. Everything about this scene embodied the warmth of the holiday season. But someone was coming who would transform this celebration into a nightmare that would shock the nation. Bruce Jeffrey Pardo had once been part of this family. He had married Sylvia Ortega in January 2006, becoming connected to the tight-knit clan, but that marriage had crumbled within its first year. Bruce refused to open a joint bank account with Sylvia. He expected his wife to use her own finances to support her 3 children from a previous relationship. Tensions escalated when Sylvia discovered a devastating secret. Bruce had abandoned his own son from a previous relationship, a brain-damaged child confined to a wheelchair. Despite abandoning the boy, Bruce continued claiming him as a tax write-off. When Sylvia confronted him about this betrayal, the marriage fractured beyond repair. Sylvia filed for dissolution of marriage on March 24, 2008. The divorce proceedings became bitter and contentious. A court ordered Bruce to pay $1,785 monthly in spousal support. But Bruce's world was collapsing. In July 2008, his employer, ITT Corporation, fired him from his position as an electrical engineer. The reason? He had been fraudulently billing clients for hours he never worked. Without income, Bruce argued he couldn't make the support payments. The court suspended them due to financial hardship, but as part of the final settlement, Bruce was required to pay Sylvia $10,000. The divorce was finalized on December 18, 2008, 1 week before Christmas. Bruce Pardo had no criminal record, no history of violence. Neighbors knew him as a friendly man who walked his dog around the San Fernando Valley neighborhood. He volunteered as an usher at his parish church. His attorney described him as always pleasant and cheerful. But beneath this facade, something dark was taking shape. A reporter would later state that the divorce had shattered Bruce Pardo. It became his obsession, and Bruce began plotting ways to get back at Sylvia. He decided he wouldn't just kill her. He would kill everything she loved and wipe it off the face of the earth. At 11:30 on Christmas Eve, a knock sounded at the Ortega family's door. 8-year-old Katrina, daughter of Leticia Ortega, ran excitedly to answer it. When she flung open the door, her eyes lit up with delight. "Santa Claus, Santa Claus," she exclaimed. The figure standing before her wore a full red Santa suit, complete with white trim and a large gift-wrapped package in his arms. Then the nightmare began. A gunshot exploded through the festive atmosphere. Little Katrina fell backward, shot in the face. Before anyone could process what was happening, Bruce Pardo stormed into the house, firing multiple weapons. He carried several 9mm Sig Sauer handguns. Family members scrambled for cover as bullets tore through the Christmas decorations. Screams mixed with gunfire. The poker game was abandoned as players dove for safety. But there was nowhere to run. Those who tried to escape through the back door were met with more gunfire. The gift-wrapped package Pardo carried contained a homemade flamethrower, a rolling air compressor converted to spray racing fuel. As he ran out of ammunition, Pardo activated this device, spraying 18 liters of gasoline throughout the house. He ignited it, and flames erupted instantly. The Christmas tree became a torch, presents melted, family photographs curled and blackened in the inferno. The scene that first responders encountered was beyond description. Covina Police Chief Kim Rainey would later tell reporters that officers were met with a scene that was just indescribable. Flames consumed the Ortega home. Neighbors reported hearing what sounded like fireworks, never imagining they were hearing the systematic execution of an entire family. When the fire was finally extinguished, the true horror was revealed. 9 members of the Ortega family were dead. Joseph and Alicia Ortega, their daughter Sylvia, their son Charles and his wife Cherie, their son James and his wife Teresa, their daughter Alicia Ortiz and her 17-year-old son Michael. Some died from gunshot wounds. Others perished in the flames. 8-year-old Katrina survived, though she would carry the physical and emotional scars for the rest of her life. 3 other family members managed to escape the inferno with injuries, but an entire family had been decimated. Bruce Pardo had planned his escape meticulously. He had rented multiple vehicles. One was parked near the house of Sylvia's divorce attorney, loaded with supplies and maps to the southwest and Mexico. Police believed the attorney may have been his next target. Pardo had purchased a plane ticket for a Christmas morning flight from Los Angeles to Moline, Illinois. He was carrying $10,000 in cash strapped to his body. Everything suggested he intended to flee the country, but the fire had consequences Pardo hadn't anticipated. The explosion of gasoline left him with severe third-degree burns on his arms and legs. After the massacre, he changed out of the Santa suit and drove to his brother's house in Sylmar. His brother wasn't home. At approximately 3 o'clock in the morning on Christmas Day, Bruce Jeffrey Pardo placed a gun in his mouth and pulled the trigger. Medical examiners discovered cocaine in his system. His rental car, rigged with explosives, was found booby-trapped. When the Covina bomb squad attempted to disconnect the device, it detonated. The trap claimed no victims, but it demonstrated the depth of Pardo's rage and planning. The Covina massacre became the deadliest mass shooting in Los Angeles County history at that time. The community of Covina, a place that prided itself on being quiet and safe, was shattered. The Ortega family's final Christmas together became a national tragedy. Forensic psychologists who examined the case identified extreme narcissism and obsessive-compulsive disorder as contributing factors. An FBI profile revealed a man who couldn't accept failure or rejection. When his marriage ended, when he lost his job, when the divorce settlement required him to pay money he didn't have, Bruce Pardo's fragile ego collapsed completely. Almost an entire family was erased during a time meant for peace and love. Their last moments together, what should have been a joyful celebration, became a scene of unimaginable horror. The Christmas decorations they had hung with care became witness to their deaths. The presents under their tree would never be opened. The food they prepared would never be eaten. And little Katrina, who ran to the door with such innocent excitement to greet Santa Claus, would forever carry the memory of the monster in the red suit. Christmas night, 1996, Boulder, Colorado. The Ramsey family returned to their upscale home after attending a holiday party at a friend's house. 6-year-old John Benet Ramsey had fallen asleep in the car during the short drive home. Her father, John, a wealthy computer executive, carried his sleeping daughter upstairs to her bedroom. Her mother, Patsy, a former Miss West Virginia, tucked her in. 9-year-old brother Burke went to his room. The family planned to wake early the next morning for a trip to their second home on Lake Michigan. Everything seemed perfectly normal as the Ramseys went to bed that night. What happened in the hours that followed remains one of the most controversial and disturbing unsolved mysteries in American history. The Ramsey family lived extraordinarily well. John Ramsey was president of Access Graphics, a wholesale computer parts company owned by Lockheed Martin. Financial records showed he was worth $6 million. Their 15-room Tudor-style mansion in Boulder featured multiple levels, winding staircases, and a complex basement layout. Patsy, as a stay-at-home mother and former beauty queen, had begun entering JonBenet in child beauty pageants. The little girl had already won several titles. She took singing and dancing lessons. Patsy spent thousands on custom-made pageant costumes. The family was extremely social, throwing parties regularly in their home. Shortly before 6 o'clock on the morning of December 26th, Patsy Ramsey came downstairs to make coffee. As she descended the spiral staircase, she discovered something that would change her life forever. A handwritten note lay on one of the steps. She picked it up and began reading. The words on the page were chilling. The ransom note was 2.5 pages long, unusually detailed. It claimed that JonBenet had been kidnapped by a small foreign faction. It demanded exactly $118,000 for her safe return. The kidnappers threatened to kill JonBenet if the Ramseys contacted police or deviated from their instructions in any way. The note stated they would call between 8 and 10 in the morning with further directions. It was signed with the letters SBTC. Patsy immediately ran upstairs and burst into JonBenet's room. The bed was empty. Her daughter was gone. Patsy screamed for John. Together, they checked Burke's room. He was still asleep. At 5:25 in the morning, Patsy called 911. The dispatcher received her panicked report that her daughter was missing and a ransom note had been left. Police arrived at the Ramsey home 7 minutes later. What unfolded next would become a textbook case of how not to handle a crime scene. Boulder was an affluent, politically liberal community. Its police department had little experience with serious, violent crimes. The murder of JonBenet Ramsey would be the only homicide in Boulder in 1996. When officers arrived, they failed to immediately secure the crime scene. Friends and family were allowed to come and go. People walked through rooms, potentially contaminating evidence. The police conducted only a cursory search of the large house. They noted that a basement window appeared broken, but didn't investigate thoroughly. Most critically, they didn't discover JonBenet's body during their initial search. The promised phone call from the kidnappers never came. 10 o'clock passed, then 11. Noon approached. Detective Linda Arndt, who was present at the house, made a decision that would prove fateful. She asked John Ramsey and his friend Fleet White to search the house themselves to see if anything looked out of place or unusual. John Ramsey went to the basement. He opened the door to a small wine cellar that had been latched shut. Inside, lying on the floor, was his daughter. JonBenet lay on a white blanket. Her wrists were tied above her head with white cord. A cord was wrapped around her neck, tightened with a garrote fashioned from a broken paintbrush handle. Duct tape covered her mouth. John Ramsey let out a scream that Detective Arndt would describe as primal, inhuman. He removed the tape from his daughter's mouth. He picked up her small body and carried her upstairs, further compromising the crime scene. The autopsy revealed the horrific truth. JonBenet had died from asphyxiation due to strangulation, associated with craniocerebral trauma. Someone had struck her on the head with tremendous force, fracturing her skull. The blow didn't break the skin, so the extent of the injury wasn't immediately visible. The head wound showed remarkable similarities to a flashlight found on the Ramsey kitchen counter. She had been strangled with a cord that included a sophisticated garrote, a killing device that required special knowledge of knots, typically possessed by sailors or other experts. There were signs that she may have been sexually assaulted, though the evidence was ambiguous. Perhaps most disturbingly, the autopsy revealed that JonBenet had eaten pineapple only a few hours before her death. Both John and Patsy claimed to have no knowledge of her eating anything after they put her to bed. The ransom note became a focal point of the investigation. Handwriting experts examined over 70 people as possible authors. They eliminated most, but couldn't definitively rule out Patsy Ramsey. The note had been written on paper from a pad in the Ramsey home. It appeared to echo dialogue from several films, including Ruthless People, Ransom, Speed, and Dirty Harry. The specific amount of money demanded was nearly identical to John Ramsey's Christmas bonus from the previous year. This suggested the writer had access to intimate financial information about the family. The garrote used to strangle JonBenet was made with the broken handle of an artist's paintbrush that belonged to Patsy. The investigation found no clear signs of forced entry. Though a basement window was broken, an intact cobweb stretched across it, suggesting no one had recently entered through that opening. Detective Lou Smith, brought in to work the case, theorized that an intruder entered through the broken window and navigated the house in the dark, somehow knowing the complex layout well enough to find JonBenet's room, take her to the basement, kill her, and escape. Critics found this theory implausible given the lack of physical evidence supporting it. Within days, suspicion began to focus on the Ramsey family themselves. The statistic that 9 out of 10 murders in homes are committed by someone living there weighed heavily on investigators' minds. The lengthy, dramatic ransom note seemed staged. Why would kidnappers take the time to write such a detailed letter while in the house with their victim? Why demand such a specific, relatively small amount of money? Why was there no evidence of JonBenet being taken from the house if this was a kidnapping? Most troubling, how did the perpetrator navigate the complex house layout, find JonBenet, take her to a remote basement room, kill her, and escape without waking anyone? In 1999, a grand jury convened to review the evidence. After 13 months of testimony from law enforcement and civilians, including JonBenet's brother Burke, the grand jury voted to indict John and Patsy Ramsey on charges of child abuse resulting in death and being accessories to a crime. The indictment alleged that between Christmas Day and December 26, 1996, the Ramseys unlawfully, knowingly, recklessly, and feloniously permitted a child to be unreasonably placed in a situation which posed a threat of injury to the child's life or health, resulting in her death. However, the district attorney at the time chose not to sign the indictment or pursue prosecution, citing insufficient evidence. The case became a media sensation. Photographs and videos of 6-year-old JonBenet in her pageant costumes, wearing heavy makeup, high heels, and elaborate outfits, appeared on magazine covers and television programs worldwide. Some investigators wondered if a child molester or pornographer had found her pageant appearances sexually provocative, leading to pursuit of the child that resulted in her death. Others pointed to people with connections to the family. Bill McReynolds, who had played Santa Claus at the Ramsey Christmas parties, came under scrutiny. He had paid particular attention to JonBenet and even tried to arrange a visit with her on Christmas Day. McReynolds once said that JonBenet's stardust was all he took with him for good luck when he had heart surgery, and that her murder was harder on him than his operation. He died in 2002, never charged, always maintaining his innocence. In 2006, John Mark Carr confessed in an email to killing JonBenet. He claimed he drugged and accidentally killed her during a sexual encounter. The confession generated massive media attention. Carr was arrested in Thailand and brought back to the United States, but his confession quickly fell apart. No drugs had been found in JonBenet's system. His DNA didn't match evidence from the crime scene. He provided only basic facts that were publicly known and failed to provide convincing details. He was released without charges. In 2008, advanced DNA testing using a technique called touch DNA analysis produced results that the Boulder County District Attorney's Office claimed exonerated the Ramsey family. The DA sent a letter of apology to John Ramsey. However, the current Boulder County DA has stated that this exoneration letter is not legally binding, that it's a good faith opinion with no legal importance. The DNA evidence remains controversial, with some experts arguing it could be contamination from manufacturing or handling of clothing items rather than evidence of an intruder. Patsy Ramsey died of ovarian cancer in 2006 at age 49, never learning of the supposed exoneration. She went to her grave knowing that much of the public believed she or her husband had killed their daughter. John Ramsey has spent nearly 30 years maintaining his innocence and pushing for continued investigation. In late 2024, he participated in a Netflix documentary calling for modern DNA technology to be applied to the case. 28 years after John Bonnett's death, the case remains officially unsolved. The Boulder Police Department maintains it as an active investigation, publishing annual updates on their website. They've received tens of thousands of tips over the decades. They've investigated countless theories, but whoever killed 6-year-old John Bonnet Ramsey on Christmas night in 1996 has never been definitively identified. The Beauty Queen's Christmas became a nightmare that captured the nation's attention and has never released its grip. The question of what happened in that Boulder mansion on the night after Christmas continues to haunt everyone who encounters this disturbing case. December 1929, Germantown, North Carolina. The small tobacco farming community of Stokes County prepared for the Christmas holiday. The Great Depression had begun only months earlier with the stock market crash in October. Times were hard for working families, particularly sharecroppers and tenant farmers struggling to make ends meet. Yet even in these difficult circumstances, one farmer made an unusual decision that would later seem ominous. Charlie Lawson, 43 years old, gathered his family and drove them into Winston-Salem. This was an uncommon occurrence. Charlie wasn't a wealthy man. He had worked as a tenant tobacco farmer for years, only recently purchasing his own farm on Brook Cove Road in 1927. Money was tight, every dollar counted. Yet on this trip to the city, Charlie did something that raised eyebrows among those who knew him. He bought new outfits for his entire family. His wife Fanny, 37 years old, their 7 children, Arthur, 16, Marie, 17, Carrie, 12, Maybelle, 7, James, 4, Raymond, 2, and 3-month-old baby Mary Lou. Everyone received new clothes. Then Charlie arranged for the family to have their portrait taken at a photography studio. The photograph captured the Lawson family in their finest attire. Charlie stood in the back row, wearing a suit and tie, his expression serious. Fanny held baby Mary Lou, her face worn but gentle. The children arranged themselves around their parents, some standing, some sitting. It was a beautiful family portrait. It would be the last photograph ever taken of them together. On Christmas morning, 1929, relatives and neighbors heard gunshots echoing from the Lawson farm. This wasn't unusual. Christmas Day rabbit hunting was a local tradition. Men and boys would take their shotguns into the fields and woods, hunting for the family dinner. No one thought anything was wrong. They had no reason to suspect that the sounds they heard were not rabbit hunting, but something far more sinister. Charlie Lawson had sent his oldest son Arthur and a nephew into town that morning to buy shotgun shells. Some believed Charlie told Arthur they would go hunting that afternoon. Others thought Charlie simply wanted Arthur away from the farm. Before the 2 young men had likely even reached the store, Charlie began his methodical execution of his family. His first targets were his daughters Carrie and Maybelle. The 2 girls left the house to walk to their aunt and uncle's home for a Christmas visit. Charlie waited for them by the tobacco barn. As they approached, he raised his 12-gauge shotgun and fired. Carrie fell first, then Maybelle. To ensure they were dead, Charlie bludgeoned both girls with the shotgun. Then he did something that would later chill investigators and family members alike. He dragged the bodies into the tobacco barn and carefully placed rocks under their heads, positioning them as if they were resting. Charlie returned to the house where Fanny was on the porch. He shot her without warning. Then he entered the house and systematically killed his remaining children: 4-year-old James, 2-year-old Raymond, baby Mary Lou, only 3 months old. Each child was shot. After they were dead, Charlie went through the house and retrieved each child's pillow. He placed the pillows under their heads and arranged their bodies respectfully, crossing their arms over their chests. Blood soaked into the floorboards. A Christmas poem lay on the living room floor, its words slowly disappearing beneath the spreading pool of blood. Only the words Santa Claus remained legible. When relatives arrived at the Lawson farm later that day to wish the family a Merry Christmas, they discovered the nightmare. Blood everywhere, bodies arranged in death. 7 members of a family slaughtered on Christmas Day, the children still in their new clothes, the outfits Charlie had bought them just weeks earlier, specifically for the family photograph. Charlie Lawson's nephew, Claude Lawson, would describe the scene in an interview decades later. His voice shaking even after so many years, Claude remembered entering the house and seeing the bodies lying there, blood running everywhere. He recalled that Charlie had 2 little beagle dogs, and they were found lying beside their master in the woods. Charlie hadn't escaped. He had retreated into the woods near the farm after committing the murders. Neighbors and police gathered at the house when the bodies were discovered. Everyone heard the final gunshot that echoed from the woods. They knew what it meant. Charlie Lawson had placed the gun against his chest, used a stick to reach the trigger, and shot himself through the heart. His dogs lay beside his body, refusing to leave their dead master. When police searched Charlie's body, they found 2 incomplete notes in his pockets. One read, "Nobody to blame but," and the other said, "Troubles can cause." Neither note was finished. Neither explained what had driven Charlie Lawson to annihilate his family. The murders shocked not just Stokes County, but the entire nation. The New York Times ran the story on its front page. On December 28, 1929, thousands of people traveled from across North Carolina and beyond to attend the funeral. For 3 miles along the road leading to the private cemetery donated by the Browder family, cars were parked. Men and women, many carrying babies in their arms, walked through mud to reach the graveyard. They crammed and jammed to get a glimpse of the 7 caskets. The family was buried together in a mass grave. Baby Mary Lou was placed in her mother's arms for eternity. Their tombstone features a symbol similar to the square and compass, though Charlie wasn't a Freemason, but rather a member of the Junior Order of United American Mechanics. The public's fascination with the murders didn't end with the funeral. Charlie's brother Marion saw an opportunity. He knew that Arthur, the only surviving son, would need money to keep up mortgage payments on Charlie's farm. Within 10 days of the massacre, Marion had the family cabin securely fenced off. He began running newspaper advertisements, offering 25-cent tours of the death house. People came in droves. They walked through the rooms where the murders occurred. They stared at the blood still coating the floorboards. Some visitors scooped up blood-soaked dirt and floorboard fragments to keep as souvenirs. Marie's Christmas cake, the one she had baked on the morning of her death, was displayed for tourists. It had to be placed in a covered glass case because visitors kept picking off the raisins to take home. When the family's belongings were auctioned in January 1930, the murder weapons attracted the most interest. The shotguns went under rapid-fire bidding, purchased by curiosity seekers who wanted a piece of this terrible event. Other items connected to the tragedy brought favorable prices. The Lawson murder memorabilia even traveled to county fairs, where it was exhibited in tent shows. People paid to see the crib, furniture, Marie's cake, the stove it was baked in, and Charlie's guns. A barker stood outside the tent summoning crowds to come see the artifacts of a Christmas Day massacre. But the question that haunted everyone then and continues to haunt people today is simple. Why? What drove Charlie Lawson to murder his wife and 6 of his 7 children before taking his own life? Several theories emerged over the decades. Some pointed to a head injury Charlie had sustained months before the murders. He had complained to his doctor in Danbury about severe headaches and insomnia for months leading up to Christmas. His behavior had become erratic. After the murders, Charlie's brain was removed and sent to Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore for analysis. Doctors there found no physical abnormalities that would explain his actions. The head injury theory couldn't be definitively supported by medical evidence. The most disturbing theory didn't surface until 1990, when author Trudy Smith published a book called White Christmas, Bloody Christmas. In her research, Smith uncovered troubling rumors that had circulated privately for decades. Family members and friends suggested that Charlie had been engaged in an incestuous relationship with his 17-year-old daughter, Marie. The theory gained credibility when Stella Lawson, a relative, revealed that she had overheard Fanny's sisters-in-law and aunts discussing how Fanny had confided that she was concerned about an inappropriate relationship between Charlie and Marie. In 2006, Smith published a follow-up book called The Meaning of Our Tears that provided additional support for this theory. A close friend of Marie's, Ella May, came forward to disclose that a few weeks before Christmas 1929, Marie had confided in her a devastating secret. Marie told her she was pregnant by her own father. Both Charlie and Fanny knew about the pregnancy. According to this account, Charlie killed his family to prevent this shameful secret from being revealed to the community. Another close friend and neighbor to the Lawson family, Hill Hampton, stated that he knew serious problems were occurring within the family, but he declined to elaborate on what those problems were. The purchase of new clothes and the family photograph just before Christmas took on sinister meaning in this context. Had Charlie been planning the murders all along? Was the photograph meant to preserve the family before he destroyed them? Or had the photograph and new clothes been his way of honoring them before he killed them? Others speculated about why Arthur was spared. Some believed Charlie couldn't have accomplished his murders with Arthur present. Arthur was 16 years old and bigger than his father. He would have fought to protect his family. By sending Arthur to town for shotgun shells, Charlie ensured his oldest son wouldn't interfere. Some theorized that Charlie wanted his family name to continue, though with what he did, the Lawson name would forever be associated with horror rather than honor. The Lawson family murders inspired a ballad written by singer-songwriter Walter Kidd Smith just months after the killings. He occasionally performed the song at the Lawson family home for tourists visiting the death house. The murder of the Lawson family became one of Columbia Records' best-selling hillbilly records of 1930, selling over 8,000 copies at a time when most such records sold between 1,000 and 2,000 copies. The tragedy had become entertainment, commodified and consumed by a public fascinated by the incomprehensible evil of a father destroying his family. Today, the Madison Dry Goods and Country Store in Rockingham County operates in the building that once housed the funeral parlor where the Lawson family bodies were embalmed. The second floor features a free museum dedicated to the Christmas Day massacre. Artifacts and photographs are displayed, including an image of Charlie laid to rest in his casket. The elevator used to transport the Lawson bodies to the second story still works in the 1908 brick building. Visitors have reported paranormal experiences there over the years. A common sighting is a young girl in white, believed to be one of the murdered daughters. Objects move on their own. The ghosts at Madison Dry Goods even attracted attention from Netflix, which featured the location in their 2022 series, 28 Days Haunted. In the private cemetery where the Lawson family is buried, a local legend persists. Some say that when autumn leaves fall, they cover every grave except Charlie's. The leaves won't rest on the grave of the man who destroyed his family on Christmas Day, 95 years have passed since that terrible Christmas in Germantown, North Carolina. 95 years of speculation, investigation, and attempts to understand. But the truth of what drove Charlie Lawson to commit one of the most heinous family murders in American history may have died with him in those woods on Christmas Day, 1929. What we know for certain is that 7 innocent people, including a 3-month-old baby, were brutally murdered during a time meant for peace and joy. Their deaths transformed Christmas into a nightmare for their community and created a dark legacy that continues to fascinate and disturb people nearly a century later. The Lawson family massacre remains a stark reminder that sometimes the greatest horrors come not from strangers or external threats, but from within our own homes, from the people we trust most. And sometimes, no matter how much we search for answers, the darkness in the human heart remains forever unexplained.